Hello everyone, Kit here, back with another video. Today for you guys I'm going to be reading the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Once again, I'll leave a link just down in the description box below, along for email. You can email us at themullings@gmail.com for private consultation. Without further ado, let me get right into it. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, often simply called the Charter, is a Bill of Rights entrenched in the Constitution of Canada. It forms the first part of the Constitution Act 1982. The Charter guarantees certain political rights to Canadian citizens and civil rights of everyone in Canada from the policies and actions of all areas and levels of the government. It is designed to unify Canadians around a set of principles that embody those rights. The Charter was signed into law by Queen Elizabeth II of Canada on April 17, 1982, along with the rest of the Act. The Charter was preceded by the Canadian Bill of Rights, which was enacted in 1960. However, the Bill of Rights is only a federal statute rather than a constitutional document. As a federal statute, it can be amended through the ordinary legislative process and has no application to provincial laws. The Supreme Court of Canada also narrowly interpreted the Bill of Rights, and the court was reluctant to declare laws inoperative. The relative ineffectiveness of the Canadian Bill of Rights motivated many to improve rights protections in Canada. The movement for human rights and freedoms that emerged after World War II also wanted to entrench the principles enunciated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The British Parliament formally enacted the Charter as a part of the Canada Act 1982 at the request of the Parliament of Canada in 1982, the result of the efforts of the government of Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. One of the most notable effects of the adoption of the Charter was to greatly expand the scope of the judicial review, because the Charter is more explicit with respect to the guarantee of rights and the role of judges enforcing them than was the Bill of Rights. The courts, when confronted with violations of Charter rights, have struck down unconstitutional federal and provincial statutes and regulations, or parts of statutes and regulations, as they did when Canadian case law was primarily concerned with resolving issues of federalism. The Charter, however, granted new powers to the courts to enforce remedies that are more creative and exclude more evidence in trials. These powers are greater than what was typical under the common law and under a system of government that, influenced by Canada's parent country, the United Kingdom, was based upon parliamentary supremacy. As a result, the Charter has attracted both broad support from a majority of the Canadian electorate and criticism by opponents of increased judicial power. The Charter only applies to government laws and actions, including the laws and actions of federal, provincial, and municipal governments and public school boards, and sometimes to the common law, but not to private activity. Under the Charter, people physically present in Canada have numerous civil and political rights. Most of the rights can be exercised by any legal person. The Charter does not define the corporation as a legal person, but a few of the rights belong to it exclusively to natural persons, as in Section 3 and 6 only to citizens of Canada. These rights are enforceable by the courts through Section 24 of the Charter, which allows courts discretion to award remedies to those whose rights have been denied. This section also allows courts to exclude evidence in trials if the evidence was acquired in a way that conflicts with the Charter and might damage the reputation of the justice system. Section 32 confirms that the Charter is binding on the federal government, territories under its authority, and the provincial governments. The rights and freedoms enshrined in 34 sections of the Charter include exceptions precluding all the freedoms and forming the basis of the Charter. The very first section, known as Limitations Clause, allows governments to justify certain infringements of Charter rights. Every case in which a court discovers a violation of the Charter would therefore require a Section 1 analysis to determine if the law can still be upheld. Infringements are upheld if the purpose for the government action is to achieve what would be recognized as an urgent or important objective in a free society, and if the infringement can be demonstrably justified. Section 1 has thus been used to uphold laws against objectionable conduct such as hate speech and obscenity. Section 1 also confirms that the rights listed in the Charter are guaranteed. In addition, some of these rights are also subjected to the Notwithstanding Clause. The Notwithstanding Clause authorizes governments to temporarily override the rights and freedoms in Sections 2 and 7/15 for up to 5 years, subject to renewal. The Canadian federal government has never invoked it, and some have speculated that its use will be politically costly. In the past, the Notwithstanding Clause was invoked routinely by the province of Quebec, which did not support the enactment of the Charter, but is subject to it nonetheless. The provinces of Saskatchewan and Alberta have also invoked the Notwithstanding Clause to end a strike and to protect exclusively her heterosexual definition of marriage, respectively. Note that Alberta's use of Notwithstanding Clause is of no force or effect, since the definition of marriage is federal, not provincial jurisdiction. The Territory of Yukon also passed legislation once that invoked the Notwithstanding Clause, but the legislation was never proclaimed in force. Fundamental freedoms. Section 2, which lists what the Charter calls fundamental freedoms, namely freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of belief, freedom of expression, freedom of the press and of other media of communication, freedom of peaceful assembly, and freedom of association. Democratic rights. Generally, the right to participate in political activities and the right to a democratic form of government are protected. Section 3. The right to vote and be eligible to serve as a member of legislature. Section 4. The maximum duration of legislatures is set to 5 years. Section 5. An annual sitting of legislatures is required as a minimum. Mobility rights. Section 6. Protects the mobility rights of Canadian citizens, which include the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. Citizens and permanent residents have the ability to move to and take up residence in any province to pursue gaining livelihood. Legal rights. The rights of people dealing with the justice system and law enforcement are protected, namely Section 7, the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. Section 8, freedom from unreasonable search and seizure. Section 9, freedom from arbitrary detention or imprisonment. Section 10, right to legal counsel and the guarantee of habeas corpus. Section 11, rights in criminal and penal matters, such as the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Section 12, right to not be subject to cruel and unusual punishment. Section 13, rights against self-incrimination. Section 14, rights to an interpreter in a court proceeding. Equality rights. Section 15, equal treatment before and under the law, and equal protection and benefit of the law without discrimination. Language rights. Generally, the people have the right to use either the English or French language in communications with Canada's federal government and certain provincial governments. I'm having trouble speaking today. Specifically, the language laws in the Charter include Section 16, English and French are the official languages of Canada and New Brunswick. Section 16.1, the English and the French-speaking communities of New Brunswick have equal rights to the educational and cultural institutions. Section 17, the right to use either official language in Parliament or the New Brunswick legislature. Section 18, the statutes and proceedings of Parliament and the New Brunswick Legislature are to be printed in both official languages. Section 19. Both official languages may be used in federal and New Brunswick courts. Section 20. The right to communicate with and be served by the federal and New Brunswick governments in either official language. Section 21. Other constitutional language rights outside the Charter regarding English and French are sustained. Section 22. Existing rights to use languages besides English and French are not affected by the fact that only English and French have language rights in the Charter. Hence, if there are any rights to use Aboriginal languages anywhere, they would continue to exist, though they have no direct protection under the Charter. Minority language education rights. Section 23. Rights for certain citizens belonging to French and English-speaking minority communities to be educated in their own language. Other sections. Various provisions help to clarify how the Charter works in practice. These include Section 25 states that the Charter does not derogate existing Aboriginal rights and freedoms. Aboriginal rights, including treaty rights, receive more direct constitutional protection under Section 35 of the Constitution Act of 1982. Section 26 clarifies that other rights and freedoms in Canada are not validated by the Charter. Section 27 requires the Charter to be interpreted in multicultural context. Section 28 states all Charter rights are guaranteed equally to men and women. Section 29 confirms the rights of religious schools are preserved. Section 30 clarifies the applicability of the Charter in the territories. Section 31 confirms that the Charter does not extend the powers of the legislators. Finally, Section 34 states that Part 1 of the Constitution Act of 1982, containing the first 34 sections of the Act, may be collectively referred to as the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And that's it, guys. Once again, I'll leave a link to this down in the description box below, along with our email. You can email us at themungs@gmail.com for private consultation. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a nice day, everyone. Like, share, subscribe. Have a nice day.